Hey guys, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, I interview Blaine from Colorado, who encountered a clan of Sasquatch while exploring in the mountains. Many Bigfoot encounters have come from the state of Colorado, and still continue to this day. For many generations, the Native Americans have expressed their beliefs about the hairy hominids that roam in the Rocky Mountains of North America. Could they be the ancient giants from the Bible, or could they simply be a race of hominids that live in the wild and have avoided mankind for so long? If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe. And if you have a Bigfoot encounter or cryptid encounter that you would like to share, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you want to help support Sasquatch Theory, you can join the YouTube membership or purchase some merchandise, and I'll leave you guys links down in the description below. One final note before we begin, I got the drone license, so we will have more footage to work with, and I plan on getting out in the woods very soon. I have a lot of trips lined up for the future, so hopefully we can spend a lot of time out in the forest and capture and document some evidence for you guys. Alright, with all of that being said, let's dive straight into this next Bigfoot encounter from the state of Colorado.
I don't even know what that is. Alright, you got my back?
Go ahead.
Dude, there's big, small. This is definitely a dog. No doubt. That's a coyote. Oh my gosh. Here's the bird's head. I got the bird's head, bro. You see it? It's a duck.
Yeah.
It's something like a duck. This is nuts. Oh my gosh, it's an elk. It's an elk leg.
Yeah, I see that. Oh my god. I think it's human.
This has got to be human. Or a fucking Yeti. That's not that old, dude. There's still meat on that. Alright, you got my back. This is for real. Yeah, dude, this isn't human. No. This is more than one bird. Torn apart. Oh my gosh. Dude, the amount of bones up here is ridiculous. I can't even tell you. I don't even know the species. There's huge vertebrae from elk. Oh my gosh. Dude, I got an elk head. I got an elk head, bro. I might be stupid for being here. There's another fucking duck. There's another duck head. Dude, and there's another one right here. Like, it straight ate this right here. That is a huge elk. And it ate it at the same spot. Oh, you can see where it gnawed off the leg, dude. Oh my gosh. Oh, dude, it's still got the ivories on it. This elk still has the ivories teeth. Dude,
Look at this.
check that shit out, son.
Oh wow.
It's still got the ivory teeth. That's how you know it's not human. See these teeth?
Yeah.
Those are ivory. You can tell. See, elk have ivory teeth.
Wow.
It's not like elephant ivory, but it is ivory. That is crazy as fuck. Dude, this is something predatorial of the 10th degree.
Alright, Blaine, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing very well, thank you.
Blaine, you had some encounters and some strange finds in the state of Colorado. If you would, tell us about your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning.
Yeah. So my family is a outdoors family, hunting, trapping, fishing our whole life.
out in the backwoods of Colorado, places where most people don't go. And we had a lot of strange things happen when we didn't know, um, what that could be. And now knowing what I know, I think, a lot of it was probably Sasquatch. Possibly. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely sounds like it after listening to many people's encounters. But it starts when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 12, somewhere in there. And we were on the Grand Mesa in Mesa, or Grand Junction, Colorado. That's what inspired me to call you. Was I heard the other lady the other day talk about her experiences, and we had a pop-up camper that would take all sorts of lakes and places that most people wouldn't go. And one night we had our pop-up all set up. We'd been fishing all day, and then there was, I don't know what it was, 11, 12 o'clock, something like that. And there was like bipedal footsteps running at the camper in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. Um, I guess I'll just say the lake. It was big meadows up on the mesa, and it was the loudest, thunderous bipedal steps. I don't know any deer or elk that run towards a camper, but it was like boom, 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 boom. And then it came right to the camper and stopped. And as a kid, I wasn't afraid of animals, but as a kid, it scared me a lot. And I started crying out of nowhere. I never have cried because we've seen bears and all sorts of things. Uh, Hunting in blinds where elk come right behind us, big bull elk. And I've never been scared, but for some reason, there was like this energy in the air, and I just started bawling. And my dad got his gun out, and we kind of waited around to see what would happen. And that was probably the first experience I could attribute towards Sasquatch. I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't make sense for other animals to do that. So that was the first one. And then we'd be fishing at these backwoods lakes, places you have to hike miles into. And we'd all of a sudden we'd be fishing in a rock. Well, we thought it was fish the first time where it would splash in the lake, and we're like, dang, that must be a huge, fish. And then all of a sudden another one, poof, 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 over and over. And we started to realize it was coming from behind us. And basically at that time, once again, we didn't know about Sasquatch, so, or whatever you want to call them. So we just got out of there. And then later down the road, I was trapping bobcats out in the Book Cliffs here in Colorado. And I had like double door traps, pressure plate traps. And sometimes my traps would just go missing. And this is where nobody goes. I have a big lifted up vehicle that most people can't get back there. And my traps would just go missing all of a sudden. So it was just weird stuff. And then me and my partner that worked with me for my business, we would go out there and go bunny hunting or grouse hunting, and we'd get rocks falling down at us off a hill in the middle of nowhere. I can't even explain how wild this place was. It's pretty much impossible to get to without some kind of buggy or a big truck. And just weird stuff happening all the time, and we just didn't know we didn't know what to attribute it to. And so all that trapping and hunting back there, we would go up to a certain place that we followed goat tracks, mountain goat tracks, and we ended up finding this really cool, I guess you could call it a cliff. It was like a little tiny area that was surrounded by cliffs, and we're kind of the prepper type, so we're like, you know what, this is a good place to build a shelter. So we dug into the mountain and made kind of a hogan, and we put a bunch of stuff, canned food, water, seeds, all sorts of stuff, just in case if we ever needed to, we could go back there. And we never went without each other. And we'd go there, and then stuff would be missing. And this had a closed door. We made a closed door out of juniper and tied it and everything. So I don't know. We thought it was just animals or something, but we'd have all this stuff in there, and then all of a sudden it would be gone. And I'd ask my buddy, his name's Tony, and I'd say, did you come here without me? Like, there's no way anybody could get there. I mean, this is in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. And so we just have stuff come up missing, and we couldn't figure out why. And we also had on the back edge, there's a giant cliff that went to the top of the book cliffs. And we strung up some rope and stuff. So if we needed to, we could go out the backside. I know it's kind of prepper stuff. We're a little bit paranoid, but we found a, I don't know, 6, 7 inch bare footprint in the sandstone on the edge of a cliff in the middle of nowhere. Like a perfect little kid footprint, basically, is what it looked like. And once again, at that time, we didn't know about them. So we were like, maybe a squirrel or a chipmunk bounced just right and made this perfect footprint. And this is back in the day. I had a flip phone, and I did take a picture, but that's years ago. But it was a perfect little kid, maybe size 6 footprint. So we just kind of blew it off. We just didn't know what else to think about it. And our stuff was going missing that we trekked in there, all sorts of stuff. And nobody was following us. There was no humans back there, especially then. Long story short, then, we were trapping, we were hunting elk, trapping bobcats, hunting bunnies, quail, turkeys, all sorts of stuff. And we would experience just like rock falls on the edge of in the canyon. There would just be a rock fall all of a sudden. It was super weird. So we kind of followed where that stuff happened, and we came upon a giant field, at least a football-sized field of bones. And at first, I thought it was maybe poachers that were dumping their poached animals there. And then when I got looking closer, it had no knife marks, no saw marks, no nothing. It had teeth marks, and there was bobcats, coyotes, ducks, elk, deer, pretty much everything you think of. And it had all been gnawed on. And now that I look back on the video, if anybody wants to see it, Sasquatch Boneyard on YouTube. And there's just insane amount of bones. And when I look back, I can see where it's like all matted down. The dirt's all, clearly something was walking around there, or a lot of somethings. So that got us kind of wondering. And at the time, we thought that was mountain lions. There's a ton of mountain lions back there. It's one of the highest population of mountain lions in the U.S. as far as I know. And so that's the only thing we could think of. Long story short, just a ton of weird stuff that happened. So years later, I came back with my brother, and we were going to film how actually big this boneyard is. And we found a newer boneyard And at that boneyard, we found tracks, bare barefoot, like we could see all the digits, but it had like a, now I know it's called a mid tarsal break, but it had this weird, indentation in the middle of it. And so we just followed that, and then we got rocks thrown at us. Heard lots of clacks. Is the only way I could describe it. It was like somebody hitting two rocks together, like clack, clack, clack. And then we kept going up, and my brother wanted to leave at this point. And I said, no, let's keep going. Let's follow the tracks all the way up. And then I heard a loud moan. I guess that's the only way I could describe it. It was like, "Ugh, ugh." It was like a deep chested moan. And so we followed that sound to a second canyon, once again in the middle of nowhere. It's like springtime. And just not not somewhere where somebody would go. And we found that. We started to go down the canyon a little bit, and it was spring, so in this area it's a deserty mud, and it's real slippery. So we were taking our time, and then my brother said, "Look at that!" And then all of a sudden we see this black blur just running from right to left towards a giant boulder about the size of a house. I don't know if what you call that, a house-sized boulder. And after we saw it run, behind that there was two on the left and two on the right for sure, and they were swaying back and forth. And we had quite an arsenal with us, a few different rifles with scopes and uh, 10 mil and uh, 45. So we were staring at where they went with our scopes, and there was one in particular that he wasn't trying to hide so much. He was swaying a little bit back and forth, and we put the scope. I mean, I could have shot him in the forehead. Had my scope right on him, and it wasn't like, I've seen the Patterson footage. I've seen several different videos that maybe are real or whatever, but this didn't look like that. It actually looked more like a chimp, like Planet of the Apes looking. And my brother said, "It's smiling at us," as the first thing he said. And I was like, normally when animals bare their teeth, they're not smiling. They're, growling or intimidating. So we watched them, I don't know, somewhere between 15, 20 minutes through the scope, clear as day. I wish I would have had a professional camera to watch them so that everybody else could have saw what we saw through the scope. I tried putting my phone to the camera or to the scope, and it obviously was blurry. Long story short, it was probably the scariest thing I've ever seen. There was at least four of them, and they were all swaying. They weren't moving their legs. They were just like rocking back and forth. Kind of like when you see somebody with a disability and they're rocking back and forth. That's what it looked like. And we were watching them, and they had their lips flipped up. And the last time my brother was looking at them, we had a bunch of sticks cracking behind us, and we have video of all this, and it was like pop, pop, pop right behind us. So that was my cue to tell my brother, we got to go. It's time to go. And so he kept looking. So he wanted to go the first time, and then once we got a little closer, he wanted to stay, and I wanted to go. And then the sticks cracked, and I was like, dude, we got to go. This is not good. And so we started back down the mountain, and very tough terrain, very slippery, especially that time of year. And so we started going back down, and then there started to be a smell. Um, the usual of what people say. It was like a wet dog mixed with like a sulfury, maybe like a sewage smell. And at first it started out kind of mild, and then it got thicker and thicker and thicker, and it was like actually burning our nostrils. And my brother and me were both starting to freak out. We got down to the base where there's an old coal mine road, and weirdly enough, such a remote place, we ran into this backpacker, and he, like, at the exact same time, it was weird. We met up, and we're all jacked up on adrenaline and everything, seeing something we didn't, necessarily know was real. And then we run into this guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I just had a bunch of rocks thrown at me. I thought it was a haunted canyon." And he was kind of like a hippie, esoteric kind of guy, and he said he had a bunch of rocks thrown at him when he was hiking through this particular canyon, and just thought it was haunted. And we told him what he saw, and he was like, "Well, I'm getting out of here." And I said, "You don't." He didn't have a gun or anything, and he said, "Well, I'm getting out of here," and took off. We wanted to go with him, and I have that all on video as well. Um, so he takes off. We start going. The smell gets thicker and thicker. We can hear stick breaks on the side of us, on the right side of the road, and we're starting to get pretty scared. And we've been in the backwoods. We've been hunting, trapping our whole life. There's not much that scares us, and there was something different. It was like an energy, or like I don't know how to explain it. It was palpable. It was very thick in the air. And so I freaked out, and I have a 10 mil Glock. And as the smell was getting so crazy in our nose, it was burning. I just let it go, and I said, "Screw it." And where the smell was coming from, I just let my 10 go, and I went ba 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 into the dirt, and the smell stopped pretty immediately after that. And then we got back to the truck, and went home. So that's the most tangible experience that we had, where we actually saw them 100%. But hunting, one year we had and people say there's no grizzly bears in Colorado. Yeah, there is actually. And where we hunt, it takes miles of, back then it was four-wheelers, now there's side by sides and stuff. But we used four-wheelers and got into the most remote places, and then from there we had to hike a couple miles, no trail, no nothing. We didn't make markers or anything like that. And we'd hike, and it was through a boulder field and up this, and we get into this, our meadow is what we call it. And there's a spring in the front and the back, and it's probably like, I don't know, 250 yards from front to back, and then probably like 150 yards side to side. And at each end there's a natural spring. So when everybody's hunting, the elk come to here to kind of hide, basically. So we were almost guaranteed a bull every year. And my dad has a pretty big trophy bull. I missed a trophy bull in there. Long story short, one year we started getting a crazy smell again, and we didn't know what was going on. And then all of a sudden comes lumbering a grizzly, and I've I've hunted black bear. I know what black bear look like. I know what a brown black bear looks like. This was a grizzly bear, and it had the hump, it had everything, and same kind of smell, not quite the same, but still nasty smell. And we watched it lumber over, and we didn't have a tag, obviously, for a bear that year, so we weren't going to shoot it unless it was going to endanger us. But we pretty much figured, that day or the next day, there's no elk gonna be in the park. Um, and sure enough, after he lumbered off, and he was walking real, how they move their shoulders, pretty slow.
he got out of there, and then later that night, just before it wasn't legal to shoot, we had a herd come in, and my brother shot a cow. And when we shot the cow, that smell came back, and each one of us took turns as my dad and my brother and my brother's friend and me were taking turns, gutting it and caping it and everything. Um, we were taking turns guarding. We had a 7mm Mauser. That was the gun that we were using to guard, and my brother's friend, who is also an experienced hunter, family hunters, he says, "I see eyes way up in this pine tree," and we're like, "Well, if it's a bear, it would be have to stand up." Because it was so high up, where he said it was like at the top of this small pine tree. And he said, "Oh, I saw it." And the smell was prevalent at that time. So I don't know if the smell was from the grizzly or the smell was from something chasing the grizzly. I'm not sure. But it scared us all. We all were trying to get out of there as fast as possible. So we normally we'd cut the ribs in half and take it separately, but we quartered it and then put a pine tree and carried it out way heavier, which is very difficult. And as we were going down the mountain, same thing. The smell got super crazy. So this is years back. I'm kind of jumping back and forth. I apologize. And then we also do mushroom foraging for morels and porcinis and chanterelles or cantarellis, or whatever you want to call them. All sorts of foraging. We forage for thistle and all sorts of stuff. We pretty much try to get everything we can out of the wild, plus what we grow and what we farm and ranch. And we were out pretty far back in one of the glacial lakes at on the Grand Mesa, and we were getting mushrooms. And my brother said that he had a voice talking in his head. And we're like, "What? You have a voice talking?" Yeah, and he was the one cutting the porcinis, and he said, "Yeah," he said he had a voice saying, "You're taking our vegetables." That was the weirdest thing. It was so out of nowhere. And he said, "Yeah, we're taking his vegetables. They're their vegetables." And so we're like, "Well, what are you talking about, man?" He's like, "Yeah, something just put that in my head." So he stopped foraging for mushrooms, and then came back to us when we were fishing at this very remote lake. And then as the sun was going down, my little brother, he's 16 years younger than me, he had a rock, pretty good sized rock, like softball sized rock, come right next to him, almost hit him. And he was like, "Who did that?" He thought we were messing with him or playing a prank on him or something. We're like, "Dude, I swear, none of us is doing that. We're all fishing." And so he goes back to fishing. We kind of just write it off. And then all of a sudden it happens again. And he's like, "Come on, man. Who's doing this?" Nobody was there. There was no humans there. And it was just very strange. Once again, blew it off because we didn't know. And then it happens again, but it threw it in the lake this time. And all of us turned around and had this crazy feeling in the air. So I pulled out my 10 and I started looking around. I had my young son there, and I was, getting a little protective. And it was just a weird vibe. And we didn't know what was going on, but I've had chipmunks throw little stuff at us before, and I know what that's like. This was a softball sized rock several times. So I pointed my gun and kind of into the darkness. Thankfully, we have good lights, but I pointed my gun into the darkness, and then as we went out, we all kind of grouped up, and all of us had our guns pulled, and we walked out of there. And once again, didn't see anything, but unless there's some weird it's human out there trying to scare people. It's possible, I guess, but pretty scary. And I could go on and on at the different situations. When my brother just recently was at a place called Canna Creek that is at the base of the Grand Mesa below Cedar Edge, and he was fly fishing. And this is pretty recently, and he was just fly fishing, same thing, sounded like a fish jumped, and he kind of blew it off. And then right next to him, bigger rock, super huge splash. And then he looked up, and I wasn't there for this, but he said he could see a giant, what he described as a male Sasquatch that had a very mean look on his face, and it sounded different than the one we saw in the book lifts. One we saw in the book lifts, there was four of them, but I particularly could see the face of the one, and they were more like Planet of the Apes looking, and what he described was more like the Patterson footage. So I wasn't there for it, but he was pretty freaked out. He called me. He took off running towards his car, and then called me immediately. He's like, "Hey, man, I just watched him, and he looked like he had a pissed off look on his face, and we're not ever coming back here." So just a ton of stuff, trapping, you know, missing traps, missing fishing line where we set up a fishing pole, and then all of a sudden it's gone. Missing stringers. We're trying to keep them, the trout alive so they're fresh, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And we, had the spike and put a rock over it, and then it's just gone all of a sudden. So just ton of weird stuff. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing your encounters and experiences with me. So, going back to the very beginning, when you first had an experience, you were camping in the mountains and you heard bipedal footsteps stomping around your camp or camper. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a pop-up trailer. It was kind of a little bit lifted so you could get back um, pretty deep into the woods. And we had it set up. We'd been fishing all day, and then we had it set up in a meadow, not like a camping spot. And it's called Big Meadows on the Mesa.
Yeah.
And we were just, a field of skunk cabbage basically. And then it was just like boom, 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 well, like shook the ground. And yeah, I just started crying, and I don't even know why. It was weird.
What do you think the message was? Do you think it was just looking through camp, or what do you think was going on in that situation?
Well, my dad thought maybe it was a bear just coming at the light, and I've never experienced that before. But for me, it was like, get out of here. In my mind, I was young, so I don't really know, but I do remember a feeling like, get out of here. And I've never been scared. We've seen mama black bears with cubs and all sorts of stuff. Never been scared. But this, it was so loud. It was like doosh, 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 doosh. So loud right up to our pop up, which is mainly cloth. So in my what I remember when I was a kid, it was like, get out of here kind of vibe.
Yeah, so it was trying to intimidate you guys.
That's what I feel like. And I've talked to my parents since then, and since then they don't know. I mean, we didn't see it. It was just super loud, and it wasn't for, you can tell when an elk's coming in or a deer's coming in. This was like doosh, 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 doosh. It was super loud
Yeah. Well,
in the middle of nowhere.
Bigfoot's known to go up to people's campers and tents and start stomping around, especially when they're inside or if they're sleeping. So it's very possible, and it's something to note for sure.
Well, we were all getting ready for bed. We were laying down, and it made my dad, pull his gun. And at that time, we had no idea. We didn't talk about Bigfoot. So it was like, or whatever you want to call them. It wasn't like we had an idea of what it could be aside from the animals we knew.
Yeah. Okay. So you experienced rock throwing, and that led you to this kill site. And I watched the videos. It's definitely disturbing. There's a lot of different skulls. It could be dogs, a hawk, or a bear. There's definitely duck heads, and you said there were some bobcats and coyotes.
Yeah, bobcats, coyotes. I'm pretty good with our local wildlife at knowing what their skulls look like because of all the trapping I've done. But it was for sure coyote, for sure bobcat, for sure elk, for sure deer, for sure ducks, for sure turkeys. I don't know all of them, but all the vertebrae was still attached, and it was like it got ripped in half.
So there's no knife marks
Whereas
or axe marks anywhere. Any hatchet
zero
marks?
knife marks. Yeah, that's what I look for. At first, I thought for sure it's a poacher, and this is where they're dumping them or something. But then I got looking at it, and there's not. I've took apart many animals. There was zero knife marks, and you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like you can't take apart an animal without making some kind of etching into the bone or into the meat. And this was like gnawed on. You could tell it was like teeth gnawing on it. And at the time, the only thing we could think was mountain lion. But then I looked into it, and mountain lion doesn't store its meat all in one place. And then also at the time, I didn't realize, but if you look at the video, there's like all this trampled down ground right where the bones are. And I see that now, but at the time I didn't even think about it. And it was right at the base of a canyon, like a small canyon where we always felt kind of uncomfortable. And this is us hunting here for years. You know, it's one of my favorite places to go. Um, so yeah, there was just there would have to be one knife mark at least, and none of the bones had a knife mark.
Yeah. And was this next to a parking lot or out in the middle of nowhere?
Middle of nowhere.
Okay. Do you think this?
Middle of nowhere. There's no parking lot.
Okay.
I mean, the closest thing you have to human activity was 100 years ago with coal mines.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Do you think the Sasquatch were collecting their kills in this area, and that could be an answer why people don't find their kills or possibly their bones?
I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know, but I think it's just where they took stuff to eat. I think that's where they grabbed some, hunted some, whatever, and then they took it back there, and that's where they ate. And I'm pretty sure that canyon is probably where they live.
Yeah, that is interesting because David from the Killing Fields on one of my documentaries, he was finding a lot of different animal bones and carcasses in his back field, and he couldn't figure out what was doing it.
Well, I mean, it was clear, and I even have it on the footage. It's clearly gnawing like a dog would gnaw on a bone. You know, it was it was not knife marks where if you're um, processing an animal, there's certain joints and everywhere where you cut, and this was just like broken. Their spines, their everything was just broken,
Yeah.
and gnaw marks, no cut marks, no saw marks. And I'm pretty good at processing the animal, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it was like a Sasquatch buffet for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And at the time, I was just joking around because the night before we had stayed a little bit too late, too far back. We hiked in and we go bunny hunting. I'd run through the bushes, kind of like a dog, and scare a bunny out, and then my partner would, or my buddy would shoot him, or I'd come out and shoot him, whatever. But we stayed a little bit too late, and we had some pretty hefty spotlights at that time, and we saw very big eyes, very wide apart eyes that was kind of up on like a small ledge I don't know, maybe let's say 20 feet up, and that's where we saw it, and we had a bunch of bunnies, that we had killed, and we saw those eyes. So obviously we knew it wasn't like a deer on the edge of a cliff looking at us.
What color?
So
What color was the eye shine?
yellow.
Okay.
It was like yellowish, yeah. And we took a couple shots, not at the eyes, but we just wanted to scare it away because, like I said, we thought it was probably a mountain lion. There's a ton of mountain lions back there. So we thought it was a mountain lion. We took a couple shots, and it came forward towards the cliff like it was going to jump down. And we took a couple shots, and it backed up a little bit. Then we kept going. Obviously we were like back to back, like circling each other, like making sure it's not following us. But then as we got further down, we saw it again. So we took a couple more shots near it. We we're trying to hit it. You don't shoot at something you don't know what it is, but we were trying to scare it away. There was another time, I don't know how much time you got, but there was another time we were more close to Utah, the border of Utah. The book cliffs go all the way from Utah to way deep into Colorado, but we were hunting for a lake, a natural lake called Echo Lake, and I had tried for years and years to find this lake. You could see it on Google Earth, even back in the day, and I have been trying to get to it for years. And so me and my other buddy, who's a fly fishing guide, we're like, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna find it no matter what. So we go this back trail, crazy, rugged 4-wheel driving trail. We get up to the top of the book cliffs, and there's a bunch of like, I don't know it was like oak scrub, and the wind was going, and I'm always looking behind me, especially in this area. It's so wild. But I noticed that the oak scrub in one particular pathway wasn't moving the way the rest of it was, like with the wind. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. I'd rather just be safe. And I took a shot towards that area, and then something black. I don't know what it was. It was, I don't know. Could have been like a small black bear or something, but it took off running and it crashed through all that oak scrub. I don't know what it was, but it was stalking us for sure. It was like if we were walking straight, it was like behind our left shoulder. And I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I'm always looking around us. I'm looking at tracks. I'm looking at scat. I'm looking at everything. And yeah, I just shot kind of in the direction where I could see the oak scrub wasn't moving like the rest of, where the wind was blowing. And it just took off like, I don't know what it was. Could have been anything. There's a ton of cat poop up there. I don't know, mountain lion, whatever. But not like not like about bobcat, but more like a mountain lion. And there's so many mountain lions that if somebody wants to look it up, they could see the density of mountain lions. Insane. So aside from Sasquatch, there's a lot of dangerous stuff back there. I even worked with the DOW here, and they were doing a study on what they call the 21 road toad. And it's a toad that like hibernates or goes down in like crevices and only comes out once a year, once every 2 years. And they'd put these radio collars on them, kind of rudimentary, really. Like had like a little, I don't know, antenna on it that they'd hook to them. And we went into one canyon trying to follow them. And I mean, this is like ghetto looking, and you'd have this like kind of not really a satellite dish, but this little thing that you had headphones on, and you'd like turn it back and forth, and the louder the beep got, the closer you were getting. And I was pretty good at it. And I met these people randomly hunting back there, and it just happened to be like, hey, can I try? And then I was really good at it, and we went into a canyon. There's so many canyons, it's ridiculous. But we went to a canyon, started to see bear tracks, and then we were getting close to the toad that they were looking for, and a bear comes screaming at us. A pretty small black bear comes screaming at us. Thankfully, the DOW girl, had a gun and she shot towards his feet and it turned around. But so there's mountain lions, there's bobcats, there's obviously Sasquatch, just a ton of stuff
Okay.
back there. It's the most wild land I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's definitely remote, a lot more remote than the Midwest. When you heard those loud moaning sounds, did it freak you out? Like, can you describe it? Is there another animal that you can compare it to?
No, and it was just one. It was just one sound. It was like, like but it was like deep, like if you were to hear King Kong do it, and it was just one sound. After getting rocks thrown and everything, we just heard. I can't really do it,
And
but
did you
it was such
encounter?
a
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you encounter the
no.
black figures take off behind the boulder after you heard that vocalization?
Yeah, it was after that. So once we heard that, so we kind of we're following the tracks, and then there was rocks thrown at us and like clacking sounds. I don't know really what it was. It was like clack, clack, clack. And all that happened. Then the moan happened, and we just went straight towards where the moan sounded like it came from. And that led us into another canyon. And then once we got up to the kind of top of the ridge, that's when my brother was like, "Hey, look!" And it was like, dude, like Usain Bolt has nothing on whatever that was. And the mud is like, I don't know how to describe it. It's super deep, like thin dirt, but in spring when it's wet, it's like ice. It's hard to walk on. And this thing was cruising like an Olympic runner, like through a canyon, from side to side. And then once it went behind this big rock, we could see the other ones. And there was for sure four of them, but we looked at it on my dad's big screen that's like super high definition and whatnot, and it looks like there's more. We don't know for sure, but I had my crosshairs on his forehead. My brother did too. And I don't know if I said this before, but we looked at him for so long. And after that experience, when we came back, I shot my tent off, blah, blah. It felt like we had the flu for like a week, both of us. Like we just didn't feel right for like a week. I don't know if that's just the shock of seeing them or if there was something happening because they were swaying, not like stepping, but like moving side to side, like like I said, like a kind of like an autistic person, like swaying back and forth, and we didn't feel right for like a week.
Maybe they zapped you guys and
I
made
think
you
so,
guys sick.
I have a video of it. Like I like my brother's watching me, I'm watching him, trying to be as careful as possible, and then behind us, when he was looking through the scope, there's like a crack, crack, like sticks breaking behind us in the middle of nowhere. And that's when I was like, we really got to go, dude. So I think, I don't know, people say they know what guns are and stuff. I, at minimum, think they were making sure we weren't trying to hurt them or something. I don't really know. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't really know, but there was definitely something behind us with some weight in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. From my experience, the rock clacking is them warning each other that there's humans approaching, and when they start throwing rocks at you, that's them warning you that they're in the area.
That's kind of what we felt like, and we probably spent way too much time there.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I mean, it was crazy, man. Like I said, if we would have had a professional camera, that would have been the best footage of all time. We'd probably be millionaires by now because if I just had a camera that had the zoom that my scope did, I was looking at its face, man. It was like so clear. I could see the wrinkles on its face. I could see it like curling its lip and it's showing its teeth. Um, yeah, but I had at that time, I think it was a G5 or something like that. I just didn't have that good a zoom. I mean, you could see it in the footage with the big enough TV. You can definitely see it,
Can
but
you
it's not like
describe?
what we saw through.
Oh, sorry. Can you describe
Go
what
ahead.
you seen through the crosshairs? Like what shape were the eyeballs? Could you see the whites of its eyes? Was the face covered fully with hair?
Oh no, the face was pretty bald, man. Like I could see the wrinkles on his forehead. Um, the closest thing I could describe it to is what is that called? The Planet of the Apes, the newest one, or I don't know what the newest one is. Whatever, the leader of the Planet of the Apes. I don't watch a lot of movies, but that's the closest thing that it looked like.
Okay, so the
It
individual that you saw, did it look more human or more primate?
I would say a mix. It was like in between. It
Yeah.
looked like a chimp mixed with a human.
Yeah.
It did not look like the Patterson footage. I've watched that a bunch. It did not look like that. It looked like Planet of the Apes. It had kind of human features, but at the same time like a chimpanzee. And it was like my brother said, it was smiling at us. I was like, that's not a smile. In my head, that's animals show their teeth. It's not usually a good thing.
So they were being territorial for sure.
Yeah, it didn't feel safe. It definitely didn't feel safe. And like in the beginning, he was telling me to leave, and then once he got interested and watching it, I was like, we gotta leave. So we kind of went back and forth on leaving. But shit, man, we saw it uh for a long time. Like it wasn't just like a second. Like a lot of people I hear, like where they see it crossing a road or something like that. And we stared at this, and not just one. There was at least four. There was two on one side, two on the other side. Like I said, we have video of it. It's just you can see them. It's just blurry. It's not detailed at all.
Okay. And you could smell something during this encounter, is that correct?
Well, no, not during it. It was after, like once the sticks started breaking and we started to go down,
Hmm.
and then we just so happened to run into this guy that was a backpacker. Super weird guy too. He's super awkward. But I have that on video too. And he was all freaked out. He was hustling, and he had said that he got a bunch of rocks thrown at him just up a different canyon. And like I said, he thought it was a haunted canyon. And then we told him what it was, and said, "Hey, do you want to go back with us?" And oddly enough, he wanted to go by himself. But then we left shortly after him, and that's when the smell started happening, like thick. It was on our way down a little bit. We smelled it, but as soon as we started actually going into the main canyon to get back to the truck, it was burn your nostrils smell.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. And the fact that you ran into another hiker out there that was having rocks thrown at him, that confirms what you guys seen and what was in the area.
Well, and it also, this is the thing that I've thought about a lot. How many was there? Because we were watching the one, we were watching the four right there, and then he's having a separate encounter in a different canyon. How many of them are out there? That's what freaks me out.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were surrounded.
But most likely, and then having the sticks break behind us, which is on camera, you can hear like crack, crack, like you can hear the sticks break. So I think we were getting surrounded, and I don't know, if they do know what a gun is, they might have felt threatened or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think if you would had stayed in the area, they would have just left, or do you think they possibly would have gotten more territorial and forced you guys out of the area?
I haven't really thought of that, but they didn't leave while we were there, pointing a gun at them. And they were clearly encircling, or one of them or two, who knows how many, behind us. I think if we wouldn't have left when we did, it could have been bad. And then I think if I didn't have my gun, I got a 10 mil that's real loud, like 225 grain is usually what I put in there. And I think if I wouldn't have had that, who knows what would have happened.
Why didn't you pull the trigger?
On the rifle?
Yeah,
When I had it on its freaking forehead on my crosshairs?
yeah, what stopped you from
Because
pulling the trigger?
number one, like I love hunting and I love foraging, like getting my own food. But um, I guess there's a couple reasons. Number one, it's this icy mud that we would have had to walk through to carry this thing back if we were gonna. I guess we could have cut its head off or something and brought it back, but that was one of the things. Is like there's no way we're gonna cross this crazy canyon with icy mud and then bring it back. Number two, there was more of them, and so I didn't know if I shot it, is that going to be game over for us, and the rest of them are going to come for us. And then number three, it had a kind of slightly humanish face. I'm not a murderer,
Hmm.
and I feel like we were in their home, and I'd been there for years out there. But in my opinion, that's their home. But it, all in all, like that, like wrap all that up into one feeling, and it was like there's a bunch of them. They're scary looking. What's going to happen, even if I do hit it in the head from a long ways out? And then, are we going to die afterwards because their tribe or family or group or whatever you want to call it is pissed off?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And there's different levels of fear. And if you're just observing the creatures, I don't think you should take a shot. But if one charges out of the brush and it's coming after you, of course,
Oh, I'd
defend
blast
yourself.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd blast it. If something was coming at me that close, I don't care what it is, a bear or anything. I'm going to shoot it. I'm not going to wait to see what happens. And we got enough firepower to put most things down, but it was a good ways out, and I don't think there would have been any way aside from like a helicopter to get it out of there. And then there's a bunch of other ones that we saw, at least three others. So what's going to happen? I don't know. The more I look into it, I listen to Steve from How to Hunt and all that, and Dave Plitus has a bunch of um, Bigfoot history, and most of the Native Americans called him like a form of human. I don't know if you've heard any of his stuff, but
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so if it's a form of human, and I think I told you already, I haven't been back since.
Yeah. And how far away was this encounter from the boneyard that you found?
From the first boneyard, from the video that I actually have put on YouTube,
Hmm.
probably like a mile and a half.
So,
But from the boneyard that actually, this is a dip. What led us to them? This was a separate boneyard that I had never found before. This is years later when we found this newer one. That was probably like a quarter mile from where we actually saw them.
okay. So you're thinking the clan that you encountered is responsible for the bones in that area that you filmed previously.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's both theirs. It was just one was older. Like I said, I think it was 7, 8 years ago when we when I actually saw the first couple boneyards, and then the next time I came out, I wanted to film the entire thing so people could see how big it was, which we never even got to because the newer boneyard was closer. And that's when we saw the footprints. We followed the footprints. We got the rocks thrown. We got the weird moan, and then just kept following the footprints. So, yeah, maybe a quarter mile from the newer boneyard that we found.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And a lot of people report finding these bone piles out in the middle of the woods all throughout North America, and a lot of people speculate that it belongs to Bigfoot. And that was
I don't know what else.
yeah, that was your initial thought too, or I wouldn't say initial thought, but
My
after,
initial thought was humans. I
yeah,
thought it was poachers,
yeah, but
but and
after
then I
looking at it,
started looking. Yeah,
yeah, that is interesting, and it certainly adds credibility to the encounter and to the experience itself. Do you think that you'll go back to this area and possibly do some research in the future, or do you have any plans to go back to the area, should I ask?
I've talked about it a lot. My brother, um, he's more gung ho about it than I am. Um, and like I told you, you got some balls for looking for these things because that was the scariest experience of my life. And it messed us up for quite a while. And he's like, well, what if we can, he bought a better camera and stuff, and I had a GoPro and stuff, but nothing with zoom. And he went and bought like a really good camera, and he's like, let's just go out there. And I told him, well, I'm gonna need like 5 other dudes heavily armed, uh, at least, and then I want some serious equipment with us. And so we kind of bantered back and forth about that, but I just haven't had it, man. I got a big family and a lot to live for. So I would like if you were to come out, or somebody like Steve, or somebody like I can't remember that guy's name. The guy that puts the camera on his back. I can't remember his name.
Scott Carpenter, I think it is.
Yeah, Scott Carpenter. If somebody like you guys were to come out, and then we took a bunch of 12 gauges with slugs and some serious like AR-10s and all that, I would probably go.
Well, I'll come up
But
there if you want to make a video and talk about what happened. I'll certainly go up there and we can camp in the area and see what happens.
do you have some weaponry?
I have, if it's all right to travel through state lines. I think it is.
Yeah, it is. It's fine. I mean, I do too. But the more the merrier. I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know. Even pointing the rifle we had, um, I didn't feel like it was enough.
Mm.
I don't know, man. From that distance, how big it looked, and then in comparison to this giant like boulder the size of a house, I don't know. If I was to guess, it had to be 8 to 10 feet tall, easily. The one I was staring at the most, and then the one next to it was actually wider. It was like kind of a little bit lower than the one I was staring at the most because it was the most visible. But there was one right next to it, and it was like way wider than the one I was looking at. I don't know, like the one I was looking at might have been female, and the one to the right of it was a male, but it was wide. I don't know, huge.
Yeah.
Had to be, and I'm pretty sure these things live out there. At least this time of year, like right now, actually. I'm pretty sure they're out there all the time. And when I used to hunt, we had all these things happen, like rock slides and all sorts of just weird shit happen. Um, I'm pretty sure that was them watching us like the entire time I was out there. I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a really remote area, and a lot of the places that I camp at are fairly close to or people, roads and highways. I wouldn't say populated areas, but small towns and stuff. And sometimes I do go out to really remote areas, and yeah, it's pretty freaky to be out there on your own with no one else around, especially if you're camping out in the wilderness.
I've been a lot of places, hunted a lot of remote areas. This is the most rugged group of mountains that it's just impossible to get through without like climbing gear or a helicopter or a bush plane. And I've flown a bush plane over it. Like I told you, I have footage on my Facebook of me flying a bush plane over it. But to actually get to it is very difficult. Like there's just no reason for people to go out there. You know what I mean? Like since 2020, there's a bunch of like rock crawler people that are going through the ravine and that, but they're not getting off into the canyons or anything. They're just going through the ravine with their rock crawlers and stuff. But there's just no real reason aside from hunting or trapping to go back there. I just love exploring, and I've explored. I would say, aside from Native Americans, I've seen more of the booklifts than probably any walking human being. Um, I've explored so many of the different canyons. There's a ton of Native American stuff. The Ute Indians were out here. I found caves and all sorts of cool stuff. I can send you some pictures if you want. Just really, really mind-blowing stuff. But as far as people going back there, not in the last 100 years. You know, like I told you before, there was coal mines for a little bit about 100 years ago, but nobody really goes back there. It's, mountainous desert.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. I mean, there's hundreds of years juniper trees like you never seen, just as thick as like a car. Beautiful juniper trees. There's some pines and stuff too, but and like I said, I built that shelter out there and we kept getting stuff missing, and there was only one way up there. It didn't make sense. And then when we found that little print on the side of a cliff, like what little kid naked or whatever barefooted is walking on the side of a cliff? And once again, had I known, I would have put two and two together, but I just was like, man, that had to be like a squirrel or a chipmunk that just hopped just so right that it made a perfect human print. Just couldn't explain it. It wasn't in my mind.
Yeah, I understand, and that's how it works. Typically, you experience the activity before the encounter, and like the hiker mentioned, he thought it was paranormal activity, and that's what I thought it was when I was first experiencing Bigfoot activity. I thought it was just ghosts in the woods or trespassers.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties. Blaine, I really appreciate you for reaching out, getting in contact with me, and sharing your encounters with everybody here at Sasquatch Theory. I wonder what the Sasquatch were up to when you guys encountered them and why they took off and hid behind the rocks. Obviously, they don't want to be seen, but what were they up to? What were their intentions before you guys encountered them? Because they seemed like they were really upset that you guys saw them, and typically they'll just walk away, run away, and that's it, it's over. But the fact that they were showing their teeth tells me that there was something around the area that they wanted. Also, the fact that they were all together in one spot. Were they just feeding or maybe gathering for the mothership to arrive? Honestly, we don't know, and it could have been another boneyard that you guys were getting ready to come across. You never know, and they obviously were not happy because they were showing their teeth and throwing rocks, so that tells me they were being pretty aggressive. Alright, that's another one for the books, and I appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you so much. Be safe out there and take care.